So welcome back, everybody. We continue in the 48th chapter. We're holding in page Samaches. I believe it's 8 lines from the bottom. To bring it closer to the seichel, to our understanding. With an example. Now, to be kind of what to the seichel. So, as we know, that even the Alter Rebbe mentions the idea of seviv kol almin myriads of numerous times throughout the entire Tanya, up till this chapter, but it's known that in Perek Memches, the Alter Rebbe is very elaborative and is very explanatory on this phenomenon of Seviv Kol. Seviv Kol explains it so eloquently, so beautifully, and again, namely in an expansion. So this is L'karev el Seichel, the idea of Seviv Kol, even more. So it's always we like to recap a little bit. The more I go on, I just realize it's really a click away, and it's not fair to take more time if it's in the same website, again on tanyaonline.com. You see the previous class, and easy to follow, as we mentioned, as the text is on a separate scroll bar. Also, you have the access in another scroll bar, all the previous classes, which come up in the same fashion. So we'll immediately go on. It's just a matter of to again, particularly for the newcomers, to get the idea of the previous or this payday from the previous class and the previous 2 classes even before that is where we began for the 40th chapter. It's a click away. So we're going to immediately begin to bring it closer to our understanding the idea of Seviv Kol Almin. Like man would place an image in his mind of something that he saw, or he sees presently. What the Alter Rebbe is basically saying, when you, for example, imagine a house, you see all the details of the house in front of your eyes. In front of your eyes, in your mind. You see the windows, you see the handles, you see the door, you see the entire image, the entire structure. It's clear, it's crisp, clear in your mind. Do you have a connection to the house at that time? A direct connection? Not at all. This is what Alter Rebbe says. That's the idea of makif. It's all there, but your mind is just surrounding it. So when you're dealing with the details, specificities of the home, the handles, the windows and doors, and you're let's say the one who's building it. So obviously you're involved. You have it in deal with all the details. And they're all in front of you because you're establishing, you're working with a home. But in this case, you're not. It's something you saw in the past, or even looking at it from far. You could even be hundreds of miles away from it. If the image is so clear in your mind, if you really remember it, you have the entire home with all its details in front of you, but yet it's not in front of you. Your mind is not physically surrounding the home. Or your mind is not physically surrounding the home, but namely your mind there's nothing with you involved in that home. So your mind capturing that home, that's a makif connection, a surrounding connection, an encompassing connection, not a pnimis connection. And eventually the Alter Rebbe is obviously going to say, well, this is just the example for the notion of makif. But make no mistake, when Hashem knows something, there it truly is the chayas, the vitality of that object. Different than when I know something, when I see something and it's very clear, there's no connection with it. Certainly my appreciation of it is not what's establishing it, giving it its life, making it exist, not at all. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu thinking about something, even though that thought is makif, that is ultimately what's giving it life. If you remember spoke about just last week, again, a few times I mentioned, it's precisely the Seviv Kol Almin energy. That's what's really establishing everything, and everything exists only because of that energy of Seviv Kol Almin. So, and we gave the example, because the reason that electrical appliance is working is because of the generator, not because of the outlet. The end generator stands in the outer part of the town or the city because it's too potent to enter into the homes. In other words, energy to enter into the homes, so it has to be removed, and just a condensed part of that energy, of that electricity, flows through the cords and ultimately becomes the outlet in the home, to which the electrical appliance is plugged into, and you benefit from electrical appliance as opposed to be plugged into the generator, would probably explode. So one will never say, saying will never say, well, into the outlet it works perfect. So who needs a generator? The generator just causes this electrical appliance, electrical device to explode. The perfect harmony of energy, or the perfect amount of energy, comes through the outlet. So the outlet is really what's making it work, and maybe we don't need the generator, which is nonsense. It's just because of the power of the generator. That's why it's working. But if you make a direct connection with the generator, with that electrical device, it'll truly explode because it's too strong. So it has to be condensed, it has to be contracted. The energy has to be contracted in order to be able to come through the cords, and it flows through the cords, that is, and ultimately becomes the outlet to which you're able to plug in the device, and it should be able to work and contribute to its comfort, whatever the device is. But it's not the outlet which is giving its life, giving it its ability to function. It's precisely the generator. And the same thing Alter Rebbe says, just because Hashem is thinking about it, that's why everything exists. Even though in the area where Hashem is, the infinity of Hashem would not be able to directly connect the pnimius with that object, with that idea, with Eilam, and in this case, Eilam Hazer and all the Eilamis. So there has to be the contracted version, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mahava Mechayim Mekayim, known as in a way of Memale Kol Almin. But the reason why it truly exists on its core level is just because Hashem has it in mind. So Hashem's Makif is which gives it existence, and that's where there's a stark difference between the not Mashal and the Nimshal, the example, and the message. But the only reason Alter Rebbe brings us just to us appreciate the idea, the notion of Makif, that it's surrounded in my mind, even though there is no direct connection of this which I saw or seen. Again, is surrounded my mind, and what I can, the image in my mind, to the image, to the object itself, or to the idea itself. As an example, to the house, it is an example we used. And that's what he says. Just like from inside him, it places an image in his mind. Is something he saw in the past or he sees now. The entire idea, and it's the outer image, v'teiche, the inner image, v'teich, and the very detailed inner image of this which one has in his mind, kule, in its entirety, that's mesuyir b'daite, is established in the person's mind. The entire idea, the image of the entire idea is mitzuyar. In other words, it's colored, or rather, it's illustrated. It's totally illustrated. In its totality, it's illustrated in the person's mind. Umachshavte, and in his thought. Because he saw the entire idea. If it's a house, he saw the entire idea. He's kind of in his mind. He sees the outer part of the house, he sees the inner part of the house, he's walking through the hallway, and he comes to the kitchen, and he comes to the dining room. It's all clear and crystal clear in his mind, because he saw it, and he captured it thoroughly. Or he saw it in the past, he sees it now. His mind is surrounding it. There's no direct pnimistic connection to it. And that idea is surrounded by his mind, and his thoughts. In other words, Alter Rebbe starts from this which surrounds, and then this which is surrounded by. In this case, let's say the house, it's surrounded by the person's knowledge and the person's thought. The only thing is, this case, it's not really surrounded in actuality, in the imagination of man's thought and his knowledge. When it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which by HaKadosh Baruch Hu it says that my thoughts are not like your thoughts. When you think about something, you're not creating anything. You're thinking about the house. The house stands independent of your thought and your appreciation, your knowledge of the home. By the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Machshavte v'daiti she'yidei kol nivroim, his thought and his knowledge that he knows all created beings. That is makefas kol nivro v'nivro mereisha v'atachtise v'teichei hakel b'pel mamash. This Hashem's mind surrounding all these created beings actually surrounds every created entity, creation from the beginning, from its beginning to its end, the inside of it, and the very detailed the entire inwardness of it in actuality. And if Hashem would just stop thinking about it, stop knowing it, it wouldn't break apart, become weak. It would just literally cease to exist. So its whole existence because Hashem is thinking about it. He gives an example, the physical planet. Hashem's knowledge surrounds the entire thickness of the planet Earth. And everything which is in it, the very inward detail of this planet, to its lowest inferior detail in actuality. This knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the energy, that is the vitality of the entire planet Earth, Kule, in its entirety, and is being existent from a state of nothing to something, ex nihilo. The only thing is, if it would just be coming from Hashem's das, in other words, back to the example of the generator, if it was the direct connection of the generator with the electrical device would not be able to function, and more so would explode. In other words, if the connection of this, let's say the planet Earth, would be directly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's yediyah, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's knowledge, and because Hashem is infinite, so is His knowledge, so the finite planet Earth would never be able to withstand the infinite energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is again the idea, the place where the knowledge is that's connected to the Ein Sof, to the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this physical world, which is again a finite world, could not exist in the face of the infinite, as we mentioned so many times. True infinity does not identify with anything finite. The finite cannot stand in the domain of infinity. It would be completely consumed to become part of the infinite reality. So how is there a planet? So you ask the question, how is the electrical device working? If you stuck it into the generator, it's a sole energy, and again, the only reason why it's functioning is because of the generator. So if you stuck it into the generator, it would explode. It cannot exist. Conversely, you say it's only because of the generator, that's why it exists, and that's why it functions. Answer, it's only after, in other words, the generator has to contract. You have to contract the energy within the generator, that it should be this exact amount which deals with the need, the quantity of the how much this container, in this case the electrical device, could tolerate, can handle. So it's the contracted version which deals with the reality and the specifics of this electrical device. In other words, then it's already removing itself from its ball of energy, if you will, which this is what the generator is all about, and dealing and focusing with the specificities of these electrical devices. And so too, that's the memali kol almin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu contracts his Eirei Abilti Balbul, his infinite light, and comes in and deals with the details of this finite world. Again, as we mentioned, we're talking about the finite, this planet Earth, which is finite, and deals with the details of the world, and as it deals with it, that itself it demonstrates the fact that it's a type of energy which is a very condensed energy, an energy which recognizes, and not only recognizes, the reason why the world is actually created. in its specific style, the way it's created. If it's an apple, so there's an energy which is focusing on creating, focusing that it should be with the exact amount of amount and style of energy which would create the apple. So that energy which is creating the apple is giving the attention kaviyachol to the apple. So the energy itself is somewhat a finite energy. Now, it's not essentially finite, because in the end of the day, it is all coming from the Ein Sof, and everything about HaKadosh Baruch Hu is essentially infinite, because He is infinite. But He is not limited to the infinity. He could condense His infinite light to come and deal with the finitude of Eilam. And so too, if it's a energy which is creating the orange, which is distinct from the apple. So it's a certain energy which comes down and has in mind, so to say, focuses that I'm going to create something which is going to look like an orange, and eventually will be the orange. And again, this example. And so too, the myriads of millions and billions of details within creation, obviously there's a contracted version, so to say, or HaKadosh Baruch Hu contracts, condenses, is Eiria Bilti Bagvul, like we mentioned a few times, the idea of Tzimtzum, and a trickle of light comes from that Ein Sof, which ultimately gives the world its appearance and its image, the way we appreciate it, we can understand, and we look, we see the world. Even the most grand creations within this world, ultimately they're limited, as we mentioned the other day. The sun, the moon, as grand as they are, in the end of the day, it's a limited creation. Now, we were talking about planet Earth. I'm just giving an example. Something which planet Earth appreciates and deals with is something which is, as the Rambam married, 167, I believe that's the number, times the size of the entire planet Earth, but it's limited. It's 167, not 168. And so on and so forth. And that's what he says. What is really giving it light is Yediyah Zu, is the Chayis. Kole v'kadar aretz. The only thing is, which is again the generator, in this case the Ein Sof, and it's only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has it on his mind, that's why it exists. Actually, it would never be created the way it is now, Balvul v'tachli, something which is limited and finite. And so the life so minimal and so minutia, which would ultimately create something which is totally inanimate, the stone as an example, or even tzemer, the vegetation world, the vegetation of the botanical world, which its style is so define, or so identify so much the whole notion of limitation, the finite, whole phenomenon of finitude. It's just a tree, true tzemech, you see a little more life, it grows mikatnos legadlos, from smallness to grandness, but nonetheless it remains on one place. And how could you compare it to the Baal Chai, to the animal world, or namely to the Medaber, which is also ultimately limited and finite? But nonetheless, where do you see a total expression of the finite and the limited? Is precisely when it comes to tzemech, and more so much more so in daimim, an inanimate, a stone, it's a state, it's standing, it doesn't even grow, which is again a symbol of Helen Behester, a symbol of the finite. And so in order to Hashem's infinite light to create that, so then you have the condensed version, which is the Mamala Kalama, similar to the energy which becomes ultimately the outlet. And that takes a lot of tzimtzumim. It takes many contractions, many condensments, and intense contractions, which the light and the energy which is invested in the planet Earth, to give it life and existence. In a finite, limited manner, just in a way of Dem Tzemech. Now, the Alter Rebbe not necessarily speaking about the stone and the Tzemech, but if you remember, the Alter Rebbe compares the Memala Kalam to the Seviv Kalam, that that trickle of light is Dem Tzemeach level, as opposed to the Eir HaBilti Balgul, the infinite light. And this is probably what he's alluding to this as well. Here. As opposed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's knowledge, which carries the entire Ein Sof-ness, if you will, because it's one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's core, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's core is infinite. Because when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one would suggest, why is Hashem's knowledge, right? Rhetorically asking, why is Hashem's knowledge part of the Ein Sof? Knowledge seems like a concept, or knowledge seems like a function, a particular function of the nefesh, right? By a person you have himself and the koyach to know, and then this what he knows. He's the knower. He uses that das, go to say that chip called das, and then he knows 2 times 2 is 4. As an example, 10 times 10 is 100. So it's a concept. He has that function, which is das, which he, the nefesh, tunes into the das and knows about a certain concept. So apparently maybe the das is also not Hashem's Ein Sof. Maybe perhaps the das is ultimately what creates. That's the Mamala Klaman idea. Why do we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's knowledge is too potent, too strong, and that cannot create a finite world? And we say the das is part of the Ein Sof experience. Why is it part of the Ein Sof experience? Hashem is Ein Sof, and He has das, and He has knowledge. And then there's this which He knows. He says no. The famous expression where the Rambam says, "Hu hayidei Hu," and by man it perhaps is 3 different things: the one who knows, the faculty of knowledge, and the information that he knows. When it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's one who amada v'yedei v'yedua. He is the knowledge, He is the knower, and He is this which is known. Evidias atzmei, knowing Himself, He knows all the nivraim, all created beings, not of a knowledge out of His system, like knowledge of man. When I know what's going on in this room, so this room is out of my system, and I know what's going on in this room, at least I think I know, because I see everything and I have a pretty much of a knowledge what goes on. But it's me leaving, so to say, my domain and looking into something else. And one would never be able to appreciate that concept when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean Hashem knows something else, right? Hashem knows everything that goes on in this world. What? He has kind of dynamic eyes, and He is able to pierce through the window and pierce through the concrete of the home, and therefore He knows what goes on. Is that the way we appreciate Hashem's knowledge? Hashem knows everything because He has dynamic eyes. There's no hiding from Him because He's able to pierce through that thick closet and so on. So that says that's obviously not the case, because that says that Hashem is there and this is here, meaning say independently existing and functioning. Hashem is able to look into that. And the Rambam says that's impossible, because Hashem is Malay Kol Haaretz Kavod. There's nothing independent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem is just looking from above or with a very clear eye. What is this? Where is this receiving its existence from? How is it alive? How is it happening? Nothing happens on its own. The only reason why it exists is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mahava Machayim Mekayim, because it's giving it its mere existence, and then giving its life and its energy, and able to appear the way it is. This table, the reason why it exists is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving it chayis, it's giving it life. So you can't say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking from there onto this. What is this? How is this could be independent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? They say He's looking from from the outer and into with His dynamic eye, and is able to see this as well as He's able to see anything. That doesn't make sense, because nothing stands out of the domain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's going on in this room, because He knows Himself. Everything is full with the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The entire Ein Sof fills every single area. That's what Alter Rebbe mentioned. It's not seiviv in a way, it's just surrounding. It is because of the Ein Sof. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows Him and His knowledge and this, which what He knows is all one, it's all part of the infinite experience, which is, with the terminology, seiviv kol almin, or this is the idea of seiviv kol almin. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows, that's the very existence of it, but the direct connection of the das, with that item would never be able to happen, because that will never be able to withstand the das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is part of the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Ein Sof, which is infinite, and therefore it could not exist. Now, it's hard to us to appreciate that idea, the whole phenomenon, but Alter Rebbe Rambam brings a very clear proof, because nothing could exist other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The little example we gave, if you remember, let's say you're sitting in one room and there's a perforation in the wall, and somebody on the other side, and your foot is stuck into the other room, and somebody pricks your toe. You don't see what's going on in the other room. You have no idea what just happened, but you scream. Why so? Maybe it didn't happen because you're not there. The answer is, that's me. I'm not in the. I'm not in that room where the individual, where my foot is, let's say, and where the prick took place. In other words, that pricking took place, but nonetheless, in the end of the day, I feel it because that's part of me, and that's why I screamed as such, because it hurt me, even though I wasn't in the area. I wasn't in the area where my foot is. In other words, in a different room. So just to understand, it's the only reason why everything exists, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows himself, so he knows himself. So therefore he knows everything that goes on. Not he's looking through from above, because nothing can exist independent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows himself, he knows everything that goes on within creation. But that Yediyah, because it's part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately, so it carries the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hu Yedei, Hu Amada, Hu Adavar Yedu. In other words, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all three is one, which means that it's all part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore it carries the infinite energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the finite world would never be able to exist if it just had that connection, similar to the electrical device cannot exist, cannot function rather, if it's plugged into the generator. Even though even though it's difficult to appreciate it, because we think about ourselves, it's ourselves, the knowledge is a step away from my core self. It's a limited energy, it's a faculty, it's a talent, it's a certain function that I have. It's not the core me. So it's difficult for us to appreciate the whole idea, how it works so differently. And again, this is what I know independently existed. 10 times 10, 100 existed before I was born. It's independent of myself. So I'm tuning into something completely out of my domain. And so too my knowledge is a way, it's a faculty. It carries a lot of energy, but it's a faculty away from myself. Therefore, it's so diametrically different the way it works by man, and therefore man cannot thoroughly appreciate this whole concept. So Alter Rebbe goes back and says, Yis Yediyah, again, as such, because the Yediyah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's truly infinite. And in any case, you can't call it, it invests, encloses itself in the planet Earth, which is finite and limited. It surrounds, similar to the generator. It has to be removed. Even though that very knowledge includes the entire dynamic and reality of Elam Hazeh, of this world, and all the thickness of it, and every detail of it, in actuality, and more so because Hashem knows it. That's why it exists from a state of nothing to something ex nihilo. Like to explain elsewhere, the whole reason why the electrical device is working is because there's the generator. Remove the generator, nothing is going to work. And certainly the outlet won't work. The outlet means nothing without the generator. And so too, it's because Hashem knows this. That's why it's functioning. That's why it's happening. That's why there's an Olam. But it could not have a direct connection with the Olam. It has to be removed similar to the generator. That's the point of Maki v'Sebeves. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to allow a very condensed version of his energy. As he says over here, Tzimtzumim, Rabim, Vatzumim, multiple, quantitative, in other words, in numbers, many myriads of contractions, vatsumim, and intense contractions, in order that trickle of life should be able to ultimately deal with and create and pay attention to the details, the way they ultimately come and are the way we know it again, the finite, limited Elam Haza. What's the real energy? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yediyah. And with this we finish the 48th chapter. Have a wonderful evening.